17, the Rajasuya sacrifice. Arjuna was becoming successful in his conquests. He first overpowered the king of the Kulindas, then the Anastas, and then the Kalkutas. He defeated the many kings on the island continent of Sakala, then encountered King Bhagadatta, a most powerful warrior. The battle with Bhagadatta lasted 8 days, but finally, when the king found himself overpowered, he agreed to accept the rule of Yudhishthir. Arjuna continued toward the north. He reached the mountains and vanquished the many barbarian tribes. Arriving in Kashmir, he subdued the Kshatriyas of that region and then passed over the Himalayas. To the north of the mountains lay the land inhabited by the Kimpurushas, who are semi-celestial beings born of Yaksha women. Incensed at the approach of a human army, they fought a fierce battle, but finally Arjuna subdued the Kimpurushas. Arjuna then conquered the land of the Guyakas, another tribe of celestial fighters, followed by a region inhabited by Gandharvas. Finally, Arjuna arrived in Harivarsha, the land where the northern Kurus dwelt, and at the border, a number of powerful, large-bodied guards stopped him. "Halt! This land cannot be entered by humans. O Arjuna, if you try, you will perish along with your army. Indeed, even if you are able to enter, you would not see anything, because human eyes cannot see this land or its residents. Go back. There is nothing here to be conquered. Your conquests are already sufficient. We are pleased with you and will happily offer you a gift. Now tell us, what would you like?" Arjuna bowed respectfully to the divine beings and said, "I desire imperial dignity for my brother Yudhishthir. If you accept him as emperor of this wide earth, then please give something as a tribute." The northern Kurus immediately offered Arjuna a large number of celestial clothes and ornaments, and said, "Yes, we know you and your brothers to be great servants of the Supreme Lord. Go now with our blessings, and may you always gain victory." Taking all the wealth he had won, Arjuna returned to Indraprastha and reported his success to his brother Yudhishthir. Meanwhile, Bhima had marched to the east with a powerful army. He first encountered the Panchalas, who happily accepted Yudhishthir's rule. Then Bhima overcame in battle the Gandakas, the Dehas, and the Sharhas. So one by one, Bhima subdued the many kings in the east. And when he reached Chedi, he was received graciously by its king, Shishupal, who thus inquired, "My dear Pandava, what are you bent upon doing?" Bhima told the king about the Rajasuya sacrifice, and Shishupal smiled. He agreed to attend and offer tribute to Yudhishthir. Although Shishupal had an old enmity with Krishna, he did respect the Pandavas as righteous and powerful rulers. Shishupal offered Bhima his hospitality for some days, and then the Pandava continued on his way. Bhima next overpowered the kingdoms of Kumara, Koshala, and Ayodhya. He reached the wetlands at the foot of the Himalayas and subjugated all the kings in that area. Moving on from there, Bhima encountered the mighty races of the Matsyas and Mallavas. Such noble Kshatriyas had never known defeat, and out of pride in their strength and reputation, they felt obliged to resist Bhima's request that they surrender to Yudhishthir, although they bore the Pandavas no enmity. However, eventually, Bhima vanquished them in battle. Either by diplomacy or force, Bhima subjugated dozens of kings. Many of them then joined him as he marched on, bringing tribute to offer to Yudhishthir in Indraprastha. Those kings who did not surrender were slain by the Pandava. Others gave him profuse wealth. Bhima amassed enormous quantities of gold, silver, gems, valuable cloth, sandalwood, blankets, carpets, coral, and ivory, all of which Bhima packed on the backs of a long train of elephants and asses. Bhima even subjugated the powerful Karna, ruler of Anga, as well as all the other kings in the region who were loyal to Karna and Duryodhan. After conquering many barbarian tribes, Bhima finally returned to Indraprastha and offered everything he had acquired to his brother Yudhishthir. Meanwhile, on his expeditions to the south, Sahadev had defeated many kings, such as Surasena, Adiraj, and Dantavakra. Sahadev reached the kingdom of Kuntiboja, and his grandfather received him with great affection. From there, Sahadev went on to conquer the kingdoms of Jambaka, Sheka, and Avanti. And after crossing the Narmada River, Sahadev arrived at Bojakata, where he fought a long battle with King Bhishmaka. Although Bhishmaka was favorable to the Pandavas and had been happy to see his daughter Rukmini become Krishna's principal queen, still King Bhishmaka wanted to test the power of this Pandava. And after 2 days of fighting, Bhishmaka admitted defeat at the hands of Sahadev. And like his other brothers, Sahadev subdued numerous kingdoms by both diplomacy and force. When he came to Mahishmati, he encountered King Nila, who was a friend of the fire god Agni. As Sahadev stood in battle against King Nila, it appeared as if Sahadev and his entire army were on fire. Flames sprang from the earth, surrounding them on all sides. Thousands of soldiers and chariots were reduced to ashes. Sahadev even saw his own life now being threatened as the fire swept towards him. Sahadev could understand that Agnidev was assailing him. So Sahadev quickly dismounted from his chariot and knelt in prayer. O exalted one, you are the very mouth of the gods into which all oblations are placed. You sanctify everything. From you the Vedas have sprung, and you are sacrifice itself. O greatest of gods, please endow me with your fiery energy. O bearer of all sacrificial offerings, do not place obstacles before Yudhishthir's sacrifice. As Sahadev prayed, the flames gradually died down. Agnidev then appeared in person before him. O descendant of Kuru, rise up. I was only trying to test you. I understand your purpose and those of your brother Dharmaraj. I always protect the city, but I shall help you to accomplish your aims. Agnidev then went to King Nila, telling him to receive Sahadev with all honor and offer Yudhishthir his tribute. King Nila explained how his beautiful daughter had won the heart of Agnidev, and now they were married. Thus, Agni always protected the city. So upon his order, the king would now gladly accept the rule of Yudhishthir. Next, Sahadev moved on to conquer various cannibal races, including one powerful tribe known as the Kalamukas. They were a cross between Rakshasas and humans. Sahadev also fought a long battle with the Vanaras at Kishkindya, headed by Mainda and Dvivida, until they finally agreed to accept Yudhishthir's righteous rule. The tribes of Nishadas, Yavanas, Pandyas, Dravidas, Undas, Talavanas, and many others were all subjugated. And at last, Sahadev returned to Indraprastha with vast amounts of wealth. And meanwhile, in the west, Nakula conquered the hilly countries, followed by the deserts. The Matamayurakas, Sivis, Trigartas, Angvashtas, and Karnatas were all subdued. Nakula reached Madras, where his uncle Shalya received him affectionately, giving him great wealth for Yudhishthir's sacrifice. Then Nakula went on to conquer the Melecha and Yavana tribes found on the west coast. Having fully established Yudhishthir's supremacy in that direction, Nakula also returned to Indraprastha. King Yudhishthir joyfully received all of his brothers back from their expeditions. Now, no one stood in opposition to his authority. Yudhishthir's treasury was also so full that it could not be emptied even in 100 years. Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramukha, Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Parakriyaha, Vasudeva Parangyanam, Vasudeva Parantapaha, Vasudeva Parodharmo, Vasudeva Paragatahi. Mahabharata, Part 1, Chapter 17, The Rajasuya Sacrifice, Part 2. It was almost time for the Rajasuya. As promised, Krishna returned to Indraprastha, accompanied by his wives and relatives. The great Yadu and Vrishni armies also arrived with Krishna, and as they entered the city, they filled it with the rattle of chariot wheels and the blasts of kanchals. The already inexhaustible ocean of gems the Pandavas possessed was filled to overflowing when Krishna presented his gifts. When Krishna and his relatives had all been properly received, Yudhishthir sat with Krishna in his assembly hall and then spoke. "O Krishna, it is for you alone that this vast earth has been brought under my sway. Indeed, only by your grace has this been possible. So I now wish to devote all of my wealth to the Brahmanas and to Agni, the carrier of sacrificial offerings. Please grant me permission to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice." "Oh, my dear King Yudhishthir, you have so many wonderful virtues. You deserve the imperial dignity without any doubt. Yes, perform the sacrifice. If it is successful, I shall consider it my own success. I am always seeking your good and will do whatever I can to assist you. So appoint me in some office, and I shall obey your commands." Then Yudhishthir asked Vyasadeva to take charge of the sacrifice. Thus, Vyasadeva himself became the chief priest. Vyas then appointed Yagyavalkya, Soshama, Paila, and Daumya rishis as his assistants. Together, they constructed 6 sacrificial altars in the vast compound marked out at a sacred place near the city. Yudhishthir had arranged for the construction of mansions to house the thousands of kings who would be in attendance, as well as quarters for the other classes. Innumerable brahmanas were streaming into Indraprastha, and each was received with gifts of wealth and offered comfortable accommodation. When the party from Hastinapur, headed up by Dhritarashtra and Bhishma, arrived, Yudhishthir personally received them with love. Yudhishthir bowed at the feet of his elders and said, "All of my wealth and all of my dominions are yours. Please command me as you desire." Bhishma, Drona, and Kripa Acharya lifted Yudhishthir from his obeisances and embraced him. They shed tears of happiness just to see his opulence and success. From their first hearing that Yudhishthir was planning the sacrifice, they had become overjoyed. Why, even Dhritarashtra was happy, sending word of his approval to Yudhishthir. After all, the Pandavas were actually enhancing the glory of their dynasty, firmly establishing the Kuru's position as world emperors, a position which had been lost since Pandu's demise. Holding Yudhishthir by his shoulders, Bhishma spoke, "Indeed, it is fortunate that we see you today ready to perform this great Rajasuya sacrifice. Surely this is by the grace of the Supreme Lord. You are a most fit person to acquire the imperial dignity. Now, please allow us to be your servants and give to us some post in the sacrifice." After consulting with Vyasadeva, Yudhishthir asked Bhishma and Drona to oversee the organization of the sacrifice. Dushashan was put in charge of the food distribution, while Ashvatthama was solicited to look after the brahmanas. Duryodhana was appointed to receive all the gifts that were brought for Yudhishthir, and Vidura became the master of the treasury. And with a desire to gain their blessings, Krishna personally undertook the task of washing the feet of all the brahmanas as they arrived. Soon, the sacrificial arena was crowded with effulgent rishis chanting hymns from the Samaveda. Among the sages assisting the sacrifice were Bharadwaj, Gautama, Asita, Vasishtha, Vishvamitra, Parashuram, Kashyapa, and many others who had descended from the higher regions of the universe. The celestials, seated upon their shining chariots, came in person as the offerings of ghee were poured into the fires with utensils made entirely of gold. And before everyone's eyes, the demigods, headed by Brahma, Shiva, and Indra, took their places in the arena. The gold platforms around the sacrificial arena, being crowded with celestials and rishis, looked as beautiful as the sky, studded with innumerable stars. The great saint Narada attended the sacrifice, and he gazed in wonder at all the personalities in attendance. Amidst the thousands of kings, Narada saw Krishna shining like the brilliant sun. Narada marveled at how the original Supreme Person was present on earth in a human form. The rishi knew that Krishna must be working out some kind of divine plan of his own. After many days, Yudhishthira was crowned emperor. And on the final day of the sacrifice, the Brahmanas prepared the juice of the soma plant to offer to all the great personalities in attendance. First, they would be worshipped with due rituals, then invited to partake of this divine beverage, soma ras. And at this time, Bhishma said to Yudhishthira, "O king, now you should select the most important person in this assembly and worship him with arghya. Guru, priest, relative, snataka, friend, and king. These 6 all deserve this worship. Therefore, worship all of these kings and brahmanas, starting with whom you consider foremost." Yudhishthira asked his counselors who they felt was fit to receive the worship first. But there was some uncertainty. Some suggested Lord Brahma, others said Shiva, and some said Vyasadeva. Yudhishthira then asked Bhishma, "O Kuru chief, who do you consider to be the best of all those present here today? Who should receive the Agra Puja? Who should receive the first worship?" O Emperor Yudhishthira, as the sun shines among all luminous objects, so too Krishna shines among all living entities. Without doubt, Krishna is the most worthy of the Agra Puja, the first offering. Yudhishthira fully agreed, as did Sahadev, who, upon Bhishma's command, stood up and announced to the entire assembly, "Emperor Yudhishthira would like to offer the Agra Puja to Krishna. Even though the principal gods are present, they are all subordinate to Krishna. Krishna is the ultimate goal of all yogis and ascetics who aim for self-realization. But what need is there for me to speak of Krishna's glories? All of you exalted personalities are well aware of Krishna's position. Indeed, Krishna is the supersoul of all of us. Therefore, by satisfying Krishna, we will satisfy all created beings." Sahadev continued glorifying Krishna for several more minutes, and when he stopped speaking, the rishis, celestials, and assembled kings resoundingly approved. Seeing his decision confirmed by brahmanas and gods, Yudhishthira began to worship Krishna with tears in his eyes. Showers of flowers fell from the sky as Yudhishthira offered Krishna the arghya and the soma ras. Everyone cheered and stood in respect as Krishna was worshipped. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Part 3. However, there were a few monarchs who did not agree. Shishupal in particular was outraged, and he remained seated while the offering was being made to Krishna. Shishupal was seething, for Krishna was his enemy. Shishupal had once been about to marry the beautiful Rukmini, but Krishna had kidnapped her on her wedding day and married her himself. And from that day forward, Shishupal's enmity towards Krishna had only increased. So this offering of honor was too much for him to tolerate. Suddenly Shishupal rose to his feet and began roaring angrily. Oh, surely destiny is supreme. Otherwise, how could this injustice have occurred? How could those present have been influenced by the words of a foolish boy? I cannot agree with Sahadev's statements at all. Why, there are many personalities here much more worthy of worship than Krishna. The great rishis, the demigods, and all the kings of the earth are present. Krishna is not even a king. He is nothing but the son of a cowherder man. We cannot even ascertain his actual caste or social position. Krishna seems to care nothing for Vedic injunctions and principles. How then can Krishna be worshipped in this assembly? Shishupal frowned. His coppery eyes challenged everyone in the assembly. This Krishna is neither the eldest, the wisest, nor the most powerful person here. Why, there are many others present who are even more qualified than Krishna in every way. Yudhishthir could have worshipped any one of them before selecting this Krishna. Placing his hand on the long sword hanging from his belt, the Chedi king Shishupal furiously concluded his vituperation, his blasphemy of Krishna. We have paid tribute to Yudhishthir, thinking him to be virtuous. That now seems to be clearly a mistake. Yudhishthir has insulted all of us today by worshipping Krishna, who most unrighteously had Jarasandha killed. Now we can see what sort of men are Yudhishthir and his brothers, as well as Bhishma, who has approved of this madness. Then Shishupal turned to Krishna. And as for you, Krishna, why have you allowed yourself to be worshipped like this? You are exactly like a dog who has stolen the offerings of ghee meant for sacrifice and who is licking them up in solitude. And just as a wife is to an impotent man, or a beautiful sight is to a blind man, so is this worship to you, Krishna, who are not even a king. Shishupal strode toward the gate of the arena, followed by several other kings who were also in agreement with him. Other kings rose in anger, Upon hearing the vicious words of Shishupal, some left the assembly censuring the Chedi king, while others took up their swords and shields in order to fight with Shishupal. Bhishma at once stood up and justified the selection of Krishna. He spoke fearlessly, checking Shishupal as he walked away. He who does not approve of the worship of Krishna deserves no respect at all from anyone. O King of Chedi, we do not worship Krishna out of any material motivation. Many times I have heard from those very advanced in knowledge that Krishna is the original, oldest, the supreme person, Purushottama, in whom the universe itself is established. And only foolish men like you can never understand this. Bhishma then gave numerous reasons why Krishna should be worshipped. Bhishma described the many wonderful feats Krishna had achieved. Why, even as a child, Krishna had slain the many powerful demons sent by Kamsa to kill Krishna. But in the end, it was Krishna who killed Kamsa. Once, at the age of 7, Krishna had lifted a great hill with one hand, holding it up for 7 days. Bhishma then challenged any king to match Krishna's prowess in battle, or any wealthy man to display more riches. No one could show more knowledge or wisdom than Krishna, and so in every way, Krishna was possessed of superlative opulences. And when Bhishma stopped speaking, Sahadev rose and lifted his left foot. He was angry, and his voice boomed out across the assembly hall. If there is any man here who feels Krishna should not be worshipped, then let him step forward, and I shall place my left foot on that person's head. Now, who will give me a reply? As Sahadev was speaking, the sky reverberated with voices crying, "Excellent! Well spoken! Bravo!" And showers of flowers fell on Sahadev's head. Then Narada Muni spoke up. Those men who will not worship Krishna should be considered dead, even though breathing, and they should not even be gazed upon. Shishupal became even angrier. He turned towards his supporters and shouted out, "Here I am, ready to lead all of you. What else needs to be considered? Let us stand in battle against these Yadus and Pandavas." Many kings had been agitated by Shishupal's speech. They now gathered around the Chedi king. Weapons clashed as they were drawn, and armor clanked as it was donned. Shishupal continued to stir up his supporters. "Let us act quickly, so that this sacrifice may not be concluded successfully. Everyone should know that we will never agree to Krishna being worshipped." Yudhishthir's supporters also prepared themselves for battle. The assembly of monarchs looked like the ocean rising upon the full moon. Yudhishthir was alarmed to see his sacrifice about to be spoiled, even as it had almost reached its conclusion. Yudhishthir turned anxiously to Bhishma and said, "O grandsire, these kings are seized by wrath, and they seem bent upon battle. So, what should I do to avoid my sacrifice being spoiled and my subjects being harmed?" Bhishma laughed and replied in a voice which Shishupal could clearly hear, "O best of Kurus, have no fear that this Shishupal can create any disturbance in the presence of Krishna. Shishupal and his supporters are just like a pack of dogs barking at a sleeping lion. And only as long as Madhava does not act can they exhibit their so-called valor. Krishna is the creator and destroyer of all beings in the universe. This Shishupal has very meager intelligence. Surely he will take all these kings with him to the abode of Yamaraj. For it seems that Krishna now desires to take back that very power which he gave to Shishupal. And that is why the intelligence of this Chedi king has become so perverse. Shishupal could not tolerate Bhishma's words, and he screamed in response, "O most infamous wretch of your race! Are you not afraid to speak such words in front of all these kings? With you as their leader, the Kurus are like blind men being led by another blind man. You have simply given us pain by describing the deeds of that powerless cowherder, Krishna. Arrogant and foolish as you are, Bhishma, it is a wonder that your tongue does not split into 100 parts." Shishupal railed on, insulting both Bhishma and Krishna. In Shishupal's opinion, the so-called wonderful deeds Bhishma had described were nothing. Anyone could have done them. What was so amazing about lifting a small hill for a few days, or killing a few inferior demons? Oh, wretch! Although you pose as virtuous and learned, now we can see your real nature. You, Bhishma, are sinful and ignorant. It's only because you are impotent that you have taken your famous vow of celibacy. Now you deserve to die at the hands of all these kings." Hearing his noble grandfather insulted so grievously, Bhimasena became enraged. His large eyes, resembling lotus petals, expanded even further in his anger, and they turned coppery red. His brow wrinkled into 3 lines, and he ground his teeth. He stood up, appearing like death, preparing to swallow every creature at the end of the millennium. But Bhishma caught Bhima by the hand and restrained him. Bhishma Dev appeased Bhimasena with gentle counsel. Like the ocean, unable to transgress its shores, Bhima felt unable to disobey Bhishma, the Kuru elder. Bhima sat down once again, simply glaring at Shishupal. Shishupal laughed. "Release him, Bhishma. Let all these kings see Bhima burnt down by my prowess, just as an insect is destroyed by fire." Bhimasena again rose to his feet, but Bhishma Dev stopped him with a glance. Fixing Shishupal with his angry eyes, he then began to narrate Shishupal's history. Shishupal had been born with 3 eyes and 4 arms, and as soon as he took birth, he screamed and brayed like a jackass. At that time, an invisible voice from the heavens made a prophecy that Shishupal would grow up powerful and fearless, but that one day Shishupal would be killed by a great hero. When Shishupal's mother had asked the voice who that hero would be, the voice replied that the child's extra arms and 3rd eye would disappear when he was placed upon the lap of that person who would one day kill him. And this came to pass when young Shishupal was placed upon the lap of Krishna. Shishupal's mother became horrified when she realized that Krishna would kill her son. So she begged, "Oh Krishna, please grant me one boon. Pardon my son for the offenses he will commit against you, for I desire his welfare and a long life." "Oh blessed lady, Even when Shishupal deserves to be killed, I will forgive him. Indeed, I shall tolerate 100 offenses from him." Bhishma then concluded, "This wretch is thus destined to be killed by Krishna. Now his time has come. Therefore he roars like this, caring nothing for ourselves or the infallible and unknowable Krishna. A man on the verge of death loses his senses and will say anything." But again, Shishupal attacked Bhishma, delivering another harsh speech. Bhishma simply waited for him to finish and then calmly replied, "O Chedi King, cease your rantings. There will never be an end to such arguments, for words may always be answered with more words. Here is Govinda. Let anyone who opposes Krishna stand now before him in battle. Thus you will attain liberation, your soul entering his transcendental body." Shishupal roared like an enraged lion. But then Krishna spoke so that everyone could hear. "This cruel-hearted man is the son of my aunt, and yet he always wishes me and my relatives ill. Once, when I was away from Bharata, he came and set fire to my city. He killed many citizens and took away many more in chains. This wretch even stole the wife of the saintly Akrura. On another occasion, cunningly disguising himself, Shishupal ravished the princess of Vishala, who was the intended bride of the Kurusha king. Obviously desiring a speedy death, he even tried to possess the chaste Rukmini. I have tolerated these and numerous other insults at his hands only because I made a promise to my aunt. But I also promised to bear only 100 of these insults. Now that number has become fulfilled. I shall therefore slay Shishupal in the presence of all of you here in this assembly." Having heard Krishna's words, the kings reproached Shishupal, but he merely laughed. "Oh Krishna, how do you speak of Rukmini, who was intended for me, but whom you stole by slyness and deceit? You cannot call yourself a real man. Do whatever you will, whether you are angry or friendly. What harm can you do to me?" As Shishupal was speaking, Krishna thought of his Sudarshana chakra. It immediately appeared in his hand, and Krishna raised the discus weapon above his head. Releasing the chakra, Krishna said, "I have kept my promise to my aunt. Shishupal's offenses have now exceeded the number specified, so now I will kill him." The chakra left Krishna's hand and streaked towards Shishupal even as he continued his tirade. The king tried desperately to draw his sword to fend off the Sudarshana chakra, but the powerful disc weapon was too swift. It caught Shishupal on the neck and immediately severed his head from his body. The mighty king fell like a cliff struck by the thunderbolt of Indra. And as Shishupal dropped to the ground, a fearful effulgence was seen to leave his body just like a meteor and entered into Krishna's body. Rain fell from a cloudless, thundering sky, and the earth trembled. No one spoke a word. Although Shishupal's supporters were angry, they uttered nothing in response. The rishis, however, were pleased by Krishna's act, praising him for it. Gradually, the assembly again became peaceful. Yudhishthir then ordered his brothers to perform the funeral ceremony for Shishupal without delay. Yudhishthir then installed the son of Shishupal as king of Chedi, and the last ceremonies were performed to complete the Rajasuya sacrifice. Along with Draupadi, Yudhishthir took the final ritualistic bath in the sacred Yamuna, and the sacrifice came to a close. After some days, the kings departed for their own kingdoms. The Pandavas accompanied them to the outskirts of Indraprastha, then bid them farewell. Yudhishthir begged Krishna to stay a little longer, and Krishna consented, although Krishna sent his party back to Dwaraka, while Krishna and his queens remained behind. During his stay in Indraprastha, Krishna was personally served by Draupadi, and Krishna developed much affection for this Pandava queen. One day, when she had served him some fruits, Krishna began paring them with a knife. Suddenly the knife slipped and nicked Krishna's finger. Blood flowed from the cut, and seeing this, Draupadi immediately tore a piece from her fine sari and handed it to Krishna to bandage his finger. Taking the cloth, Krishna smiled and said, "O gentle lady, surely I will repay this gift of your sari." Draupadi looked down modestly and thanked Krishna, who wrapped his finger with the strip of silk. Krishna then stood up and left the room. Jaya Govinda, Jaya Gopal, Keshava, Madhava, Dina Dayal, Dina Dayal, Prabhu, Dina Dayal, Dina Dayal, Prabhu, Dina Dayal. Shyama Sundara, Kanaya Lal, Girivaradhari, Nanda Dulal. Nanda Dulal, Prabhu Nanda Dulal, Nanda Dulal, Prabhu Nanda Dulal. Achyut Keshava, Sri Radha Madhava, Govinda Gopala Hari. Achyut Keshava, Sri Radha Vallabha, Govinda Gopala Hari. Drupada Sutako, Laja Bachayo, Graha Se Gajako, Panda Chudayo. Aise Kripa, Dama Ko Mere, Barambara, Pranam Hai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.